Put that child down. I have called the police.
Imagine this. You're just doing your job. The most important job in the world, caring for someone else's most precious belonging. The sun is out, the sidewalk is familiar, and in an instant, a stranger's finger, pointed like a weapon, rewrites your entire reality. You become a suspect, a threat, your very presence an act of crime. This is the story of Geneva Prescott and the day a woman with a clipboard and a vicious assumption tried to steal her peace. Geneva Prescott was a creature of gentle rhythm. Her life was built on the soft cadence of lullabies, the predictable chaos of snack time, and the profound trust she earned from the families who invited her into their homes. For the Carter family, she wasn't just childcare, she was family. She'd been with little Noah since his first wobbly steps. She knew his favorite hiding spot for peas, the exact way he liked his blanket tucked, and the secret tickle spot that turned tears into giggles. Noah's parents, David and Maya Carter, both lawyers with relentless schedules, rested easier knowing Geneva was their anchor. Their neighborhood, the Oaks, was all manicured lawns and silent sidewalks. It had a homeowners association run with the iron fist of one Deborah Langford. Deborah presided over paint swatches and mailbox styles like a sovereign, her authority derived from bylaws and a deep, unshakable conviction about who belonged. She saw the Oaks not just as a community, but as a curated exhibit. And to her, Geneva, a young black woman walking a white child, was an unexplained variable in her perfect equation. It started with looks, lingering stares from behind sheer curtains as Geneva pushed Noah's stroller. A too bright, insincere smile from Deborah during one of her neighborhood wellness walks. Then came the friendly questions. "And who do you work for, dear? Do you have your ID on you?" Geneva, polite and professional, would answer, each interaction leaving a faint, cold residue on her skin. She mentioned it to Maya Carter once, offhand. Maya had sighed, a sound of weary recognition. "Deborah Langford," she'd said, "just keep the weekly schedule on your phone. Ignore her. She's all noise." But noise can become a siren. The day it happened was a Tuesday, perfectly ordinary. Noah was fussy with a molar coming in, and Geneva decided a walk in the fresh air would soothe them both. She had him snug in the stroller, his favorite stuffed elephant clutched in his fist. They were 2 blocks from home, Geneva pointing out the shapes of clouds, when Deborah Langford's SUV pulled to a sudden, sharp stop at the curb. She emerged not as a neighbor, but as an official, clipboard in hand, her posture rigid. The friendly pretense was gone, sandblasted away by something harder, more excited. "You there," Deborah said, her voice carrying across the quiet street. "Stop right there." Geneva paused, confused. "Afternoon, Miss Langford. Just getting some air for Noah?" Deborah didn't look at Noah. Her eyes were fixed on Geneva, scanning her from her braids to her sneakers. "This child, what is your relation to him?" The question, so blunt, so cold, stole the air for a second. "I'm his nanny. You know that. I work for the Carters on Sycamore."
"I need to see identification and a letter of authorization from the parents, immediately." Deborah took a step closer, her voice dropping into a theatrical whisper that was somehow louder than a shout. "We've had reports of suspicious persons in the area." Geneva's heart began a slow, heavy drum against her ribs. Suspicious persons. The words hung in the space between them, toxic and familiar. She fumbled for her phone, her hands suddenly clumsy. I have the family's contact info right here. I have a schedule. I can call Mrs. Carter right now." "I've already called the authorities," Deborah announced, as if delivering a verdict. She raised her phone, and I'm documenting this for the HOA Security Committee. Now, you will wait here until the police arrive to sort this out." Fear, cold and liquid, poured into Geneva's stomach. The police, being made to stand on this sidewalk in front of these silent, watching houses as if she were a criminal. Noah, sensing the shift in energy, began to whimper. "Miss Langford, please," Geneva said, her voice straining to stay level. "Let me just call his mother. This is a mistake." "The mistake," hissed Deborah, leaning in, "was thinking you could just walk off with a child in broad daylight. I know your type. You all think you can get away with anything." You all. The world narrowed to those two words. The cloud shapes were gone. The warmth of the sun vanished. There was only the concrete beneath her feet, the crying child in the stroller, and the triumphant, righteous glare of the woman blocking her path. Geneva's professionalism was a shield, but Deborah's words were a spear designed to slip between the seams. A crowd had begun to gather, neighbors on porches, a man walking his dog, pausing to watch. Their faces were a blur of curiosity and uncertainty. No one intervened. Deborah Langford had the clipboard. She had the title. She had the narrative. The police arrived in 2 cruisers, lights flashing, slicing the afternoon stillness with their blue and red glare. The officers were professional, but the damage was done. Geneva had to stand there, explaining who she was, while Deborah stood a few feet away, narrating her version to a second officer. "I just knew something wasn't right. Never seen her before in my life. The child was clearly distressed." It was Maya Carter, arriving home early from a canceled deposition, who broke the scene. She came running down the sidewalk, her heels clicking a frantic rhythm. She swept Noah into her arms, her face a storm of fury and protective love. She confirmed Geneva's identity, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. The police, seeing the rightful mother, apologized to Geneva, a stiff, formal thing, and left. Deborah Langford lingered for a moment, her conviction wilting only slightly. She offered no apology, just a tight, "Well, one can't be too careful. The safety of our children is paramount." She walked back to her SUV, as if she'd simply performed a difficult but necessary civic duty. For Geneva, the ride home was silent. The humiliation was a physical weight. The fear had metabolized into a deep, trembling anger. Maya was livid, apologizing over and over. But Geneva was somewhere else, trapped in the memory of those 2 words, "you all." She didn't go to work the next day. She couldn't. The thought of returning to the Oaks, of those curtains twitching, made her feel ill. Maya Carter called, not to ask when she was coming back, but to tell her to take all the time she needed, paid. And then Maya said 3 words that changed the trajectory of everything. "We have footage." The Carters, like many parents, had a nanny-cam in the living play area, a small, discreet thing for peace of mind. It had audio. Maya reviewed it, and there, in crystal-clear digital detail, was the entire lead-up. Geneva's gentle patience with a fussy Noah, her cheerful announcement about going for a walk, her packing the diaper back with meticulous care. It showed a professional, a caregiver in her element. It showed the truth. Maya Carter didn't just post it online. As a lawyer, she understood the architecture of consequence. She sent a copy to the HOA board with a searing legal letter. She sent it to every news outlet that had picked up the initial sensationalized nanny nabbed report from the police plotter. And then she released it publicly. The footage went not viral, but atomic. It wasn't just the video, it was the chilling audio of Deborah's accusations, the damning clarity of her bias. The contrast between Geneva's calm care and Deborah's venomous performance was a masterpiece of social indictment. The narrative flipped irrevocably.
The HOA board, facing a blistering lawsuit for racial harassment and a crippling PR disaster, moved swiftly. Deborah Langford was removed as president. The lawsuit Maya and Geneva filed for slander, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and racial discrimination was a stone they chose not to drop. It wasn't about the money, Maya explained to Geneva. It was about the record. It was about making the injury so legally tangible that no one could ever dismiss it as a misunderstanding again. Deborah Langford's life became a quiet unraveling. The social capital she'd hoarded evaporated. Former allies on the board gave terse no comments. She became a meme, a shorthand for bigotry cloaked in civic duty. The neighborhood she sought to protect now looked at her with averted eyes and cold shoulders. The power she'd wielded was, in the end, borrowed, and the community called the debt due. For Geneva, the victory was quieter, more internal. The lawsuit settlement included a public court-ordered apology from Deborah, read aloud in a sterile courtroom. The words meant nothing. What mattered was the restoration of her own narrative. She returned to work for the Carters, but something had shifted. She walked the sidewalks of the Oaks, not with defiance, but with a reclaimed serenity. She was no longer an unexplained variable. She was Geneva Prescott. Her name was known. Her story had been heard. And sometimes, on those sunny afternoon walks, with Noah chattering in his stroller, she would feel the weight of unseen eyes. But now she knew. They weren't just looking at her. They were remembering the woman with the clipboard and the deafening silence that followed her fall. That silence, Geneva thought, sounded a lot like justice catching its breath.